You're listening to a Whales Are Whales production.
You're also listening to Whales.
Visit whalesorwhales.com for more projects and shows like this one.
Welcome to Third Person, a podcast about storytelling and fiction. I'm your host, Bryan, and joining me today are two other people that you might be able to predict because they've been here on every single other episode. One of those people is Abigail. Hello, Abigail.
Woo!
I like it. Enthusiasm. And the other person is my brother, Steven. Hello, Steven.
Woo!
Now it just seems like you're copycatting.
Well, maybe I am.
Poser.
See, if I'd intro
It's
you
not like
first-
Abigail introduced the phrase woohoo.
You know what?
That's a good
I introduced
point.
it to the world just now, so
Yeah, I'd actually never heard that before.
Have you never played a Mario game in your life?
I was going to make that reference, and I'm happy you did, because that was a more
Calling your
natural
bluff.
place to put it.
Yeah.
This episode's going to be about something. People who, are looking at the episode title, which if you're listening to this, you've probably seen, know that it's going to be about the movie, The Book Thief. Since we have just finished our series on the book, The Book Thief, we thought we'd watch the movie and talk about that, because, we're really smart.
Yeah, it's the book thief, the movie of the book thief, the book.
it's
Yeah, see, I
the
was
book
trying to
thief,
explain
the
it.
movie, the podcast.
You explained it so much clearer than I did, Stephen. Now it all makes sense.
Well,
And yes, Abigail, we need to name this The Book Thief, the Movie, the podcast.
Oh, please do.
Which I think is going to be the episode
that
title.
should be the same thing.
So I'm just going to say, let's jump into discussion here because, I don't really care about how you people are. I assume you're doing well.
Oh yeah.
My
Oh, yeah.
feet are asleep right now, but other than that,
Oh, see, that was important information. That shows me I shouldn't go charging ahead so wantonly. Yes, my feet are not asleep. What about yours, Stephen?
Let me check. Nope.
And if your feet are asleep, do write in at thirdpersonshow@gmail.com.
tweet us so that we can
a
get it live.
storytelling podcast elevating the dialogue.
Yes, or tweet us at Third Person Show with hashtag feet asleep. And
do
you'll
that.
enter a drawing
Don't
for a
do that.
free pair of socks.
Don't
I'm
do
so
that.
tweeting us right now.
Oh, I love jokes to happen when there aren't even live streams for people to know what we're talking about. All right. So yeah, The Book Thief, the movie. I think it'd be fun if, like our first episode of, after a quick intro about it, our first episode of The Book Thief, we went over all the different characters and thought how they were portrayed in the movie.
Okay.
But before we do that, just any general thoughts about the movie you want to start with?
Well, should we say who directed it and stuff?
That's unimportant. It was Michael Jackson, right?
What year did it come out?
All
did
right,
come out
fine.
in
I'll
2013.
pull up the Wikipedia page and
Basically,
read
I
off
just want you
relevant
to read
information.
IMDb to me.
It came out in 2013. I know that.
All right. Do you know who directed it?
No. Someone with an American name, I thought, but I'm not sure.
Okay, that's
All right.
definitely good.
It was
enough for me.
directed by Brian Percival.
Ha!
Yeah, I don't know who that is.
I don't either. What else has he directed? Has he done anything we know?
This is so dumb. I should have looked this stuff up beforehand.
Gosh,
'Cause I was not
Brian,
expecting
slowing
this.
down the podcast.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Okay.
okay, we
He
don't-
directed a bunch of Downton Abbey.
Oh, I love Downton Abbey.
All right. He also directed North and South.
I love that movie.
It's a miniseries or a movie.
Yeah, I know, it's great.
Okay.
North and South.
All right.
Okay.
So you should like this director.
Okay,
He
okay.
seems like a good fit.
So now,
He does.
Now that I know that,
Mhm.
comparing The Book Thief to Downton Abbey and North and South, maybe it's because I read the book first, but
Mhm.
I feel like it doesn't hold up.
All right, so I think there are going to be two primary ways we look at this movie. One is as it compares to the book, and the second is just how it holds up as its own story. And both are very valid and important ways to look at it, but they are going to be different. Stephen, what do you think? Should we just jump into the characters specifically, or start talking about our overall feelings starting out?
I don't think we can start with specifics because we're gonna start with that and then get on
and then
tangents
end up
about what
talking
we
about our
actually
overall
think about.
feelings. I agree with you on that.
Exactly.
So let's just go around table here. Stephen, what did you think of The Book Thief as a standalone, and what did you think of it compared to the book?
Well, I suppose I feel like the creators of the film read the book all the way through, looked around at each other at a table and just kind of went, wow, that was a story about a girl living in World War II. You bet your hat it was. Let's make a feature film. And that's about as far as they went. As a movie, it's okay. As a companion to the book, it's very sad, I think. I feel like it lost all of its weight. I'll stop monologuing now because I have a lot of opinions.
We'll go into that in more depth soon. But yeah, I'm just looking for like initial impressions.
Those are my initial impressions. I feel like
inquiring minds want to know. All right,
it's a serviceable film, but almost everything that was special was lost.
I will not spoil whether or not I agree with you.
Okay.
Abigail, what did you think about The Book Thief, the movie?
I think I had similar thoughts. I gave it a really good try. Normally
Wait, you didn't finish it?
No. I finished it. Let me explain.
Okay.
Yeah, that would suck if I didn't finish it.
Yeah.
I started out the movie and I was going, okay, this is a movie based on the book, which means it's most likely not going to be good. But I'm going to try anyways. Mostly because I was very impressed by The Fault in Our Stars that came out recently. And I was like, that was a book where, I mean, things happened, but it wasn't like super exciting or anything. And it turned out really, really well. And so I started watching The Book Thief, and as a movie, I probably would not have liked it by itself.
Right.
I agree.
Yeah, it was one of those representations where it almost took the book word for word and just put it on screen instead of transforming the story for the screen.
Right. I agree with you.
I mean, a couple things were changed, and I respected those changes, but other than that, I was like...
So it sounds like both of you are pretty tepid on it. You don't have strong hatred for it, like it ruined everything, but it didn't do much for you.
There's nothing to hate about it. It's just like all of those... through the last episodes, we've been talking about how The Book Thief drags in certain areas and is starting to feel typical, or is it really just a story about a Jew who lives? And it's like, no, it isn't. Once you get to the end, it isn't. In the book, it is. It really just is. That's all they get to.
Yeah, my opinion on it is basically, when we talked about The Book Thief, we talked about how it wasn't a very good story, but it was excellent storytelling. And in my opinion, the movie reinforces that opinion.
Yeah.
Which is when you take the story and remove from it how it's told, it's really boring. Like, I was honestly bored during most of this movie.
I'm not gonna lie, I paused a few times to do some studying and then went back to it. Like, that's how much.
And the studying was probably more entertaining. Like,
I hated the studying. Yeah. But at the same time, I was like, well, I'm not like pulled to watch this movie.
No, it is not a compelling story on its own. What made the story compelling is how it was told. The idea that he would randomly spoil things and death would draw you along with this magnificent prose and then pull the rug out from under you by telling you what's about to happen or telling you what this guy's randomly thinking. When you just take the events, it's dull.
May I present a short scene?
Fine.
No? All right, I'll just sit over here.
No, go ahead.
Where I can't bother anyone. Okay, may I present a very short scene that, in my opinion, epitomizes all of the problems I have with this movie.
Sure.
Please do.
It's the scene where Rudy jumps in the river to get the book.
Okay.
In the book, not the book that fell in the river, but in the actual book, The Book Thief, this was a moment about Rudy as a person. He went in after that book, and he just stood there, smiling, freezing, dripping with river water, because after having a horrible day, after going through all of these struggles, he had a victory. It was minor. You could even say it was humiliating, but to Rudy, that didn't matter. With his devil-may-care attitude, that was everything. And the narrator described that as this shining moment, and it kind of stuck in my mind. And there was like a bit of humor there. There was a bit of like almost bittersweetness, because if this is the best he can do, how good really is Rudy? It was a great, great moment. In the movie, the whole scene was Rudy does something brave and nice, and the tension or the notable emotional pull of that scene was Liesel thinking that he was going to drown for a moment.
Right. And suddenly, that's a consistent problem I've noticed throughout the film, is its building of tension is both cheap and ineffective. Like, it consistently would do this. It turned this scene where Max was hiding in the basement to a very traditional hiding scene.
Yeah, I was really disappointed because I remember she goes and scrapes her knee and whatnot. I mean, I saw that this scene was coming because the people were coming around, and I go, oh yes, I'm so excited. This was my favorite scene in the book. Out of all of the scenes, including the ending scene, this was my favorite scene, and I was very disappointed.
Yeah, because they changed. Yeah, go ahead.
They changed so much. Honestly, what made that scene so great was, to me, was Liesel's plan. Basically, the fact that she goes, I'm going to help them and I'm going to be the one who warns them. So I'm going to come up with this plan so that I can get inside and warn them, and we'll try to get everybody out. Then when that doesn't really work, basically the Gestapo or whatever the hell they're called in Germany go downstairs, and everyone is just left waiting, and all you can see is the family upstairs while we have no idea what's going on with him. We can't
exactly. And the book did a very good job. Yeah. The book did a very good job of not creating cheap tension, because the book starting out, you knew they were trying to go into a basement to check for if it could be a good shelter. They didn't hide that fact until the end. Like in the movie, they tried to portray it like they were searching for Jews. That's what they were trying to make you think.
Yeah, that was hard.
In addition, in the book, it was a really congenial, friendly officer who came in, even from the beginning. In the movie, it was a threatening, terse officer. In the book, they were not down there with him. In the movie, they were. In the book, you didn't see him hovering over the tarp and do the classic bait and switch of what is this, pick up a different object, and then, you think they notice it and then they don't. Like, the movie just took all the things that the book made kind of natural and part of normal life and made it a traditional movie hiding scene, which really disappointed me.
I think one reason it worked so well in the book is because when I read the character who was coming in to search them, I was imagining Hans from, I think his name is Hans, from Inglourious Bastards. If anyone has seen the movie. I know Brian has.
But remind me who that is.
He's basically the main Nazi guy who's always smiling and he's always nice. And especially that very opening scene is when he comes in to interrogate someone about Jews. So I'm almost imagining that scene. That was a very...
Nazis are way scarier when they're friendly.
Oh yeah, they're so much scarier when they're friendly because you know that they're not nice. And so you're like, what do you want? You're trying to manipulate me. What are you doing? And so when I read it in the book, I imagined that character playing there, super nice, super friendly. Hey, I'm just coming in to check your basement. I just want to see if it's deep enough. No harm. And that made me more tense than anything else.
Right. And then, the other tension, Stevie, you mentioned when Rudy was drowning, quote unquote, when getting the book, that was kind of a cheap tension build. Additionally, when they showed the truck flipping over, but then not showing what happened to Hans,
that was really
another cheap tension build. So the book specifically avoided those types of things. And that's one of the things I think we point out several times that we appreciated about it, is instead of building tension, it would release tension randomly and then build up to it again. Well, the movie just kind of took it in a traditional plot format of, build tension, release, etc.
And I think what makes this conversation different than just I liked this story and they changed some of my favorite characters and they changed some of my favorite moments, why did they do that sort of deal, is that I don't take issue with the things that they changed, the events that they changed. It just felt to me like the creators of the movie fundamentally did not understand what made the book worth reading.
Which was the narrator, really. It was how it was told. It wasn't what was told.
And that narrator really only got, 5 paragraphs or so throughout the entire film.
It felt disjointed as an aspect of the storytelling rather than natural. Which, I mean, that is a hard thing to do.
It certainly is. I guarantee it could have been done better with some skillful hands. But I'm not going to... I remember talking about the movie and saying, I don't think they can do this. And then
that was my biggest fear, honestly, was how death was going to be portrayed.
And kind of the sad thing is he really wasn't. He has kind of a generic, British narrator.
I think the one scene I really liked with death, and I think it was a nod to... I don't think he actually quoted this from the book, but nod to in the book where he said he's so ordinary, and he doesn't get the image of the sickle, is when right before the bombs drop, they have that kind of ordinary looking man dressed all in black walking down the street.
Oh, that was good, yeah.
As Death narrates. I thought that was the best scene with Death, because I thought that was pretty cool.
I think probably the part of the movie that I went, wow, this feels like the book, the only part, was when the little boys were running through the street and they're going, war, yay, we're going to war, or whatever. And they're waving the papers and Death says, so often they think that they're running to war, but in fact they're just running to me. And the boys are running at the camera at that point. Yeah. And that was a direct quote from the book, and I loved it. And the way that they portrayed that it gave me the same feeling that I felt when I read the book, and I was going, "This is the book thief. Like, this is what the whole movie should feel like."
it needed more cinematography. It needed more subtlety and metaphor in it. Unfortunately, they just found every scene and took it at its base value.
Right, and not even every scene. And that's the interesting thing about The Book Thief as a movie. Obviously, it's a pretty long book. They can't fit in every slice of life moment into
and not every
2
one of them
hours.
is important necessarily.
But that's the thing, is The Book Thief did not miss out on very many important moments. The problem is it missed out on unimportant moments. And when you do that, the story loses its purpose in the first place. It was too purposeful of a story in the movie, yet also felt like a pointless story because it felt more like it had a point. That's a weird point to make, but I think it is a distinction from the book.
Well, that makes sense, because in the end of the book, when the bombs fall, the whole point is that you've lost an entire town. The whole point is that you've spent your entire reading experience meeting every single person in this town, and then you feel such a loss at the end. I didn't feel that loss at the end at all, because I hardly knew any of the characters.
Every story arc was truncated so much that you didn't really feel attached to anyone, like especially the mayor's wife. Like, they kept so little of what made that story actually interesting.
It truly is a shame that they weren't able to capture that kind of firecracker spirit that Liesl has.
Right.
She was such a.
So let's jump into the characters.
Okay.
Now
Yeah.
that we're doing
Liesl.
that. So we kind of
talked
about
a.
death. Yeah. We talked about death. So let's just go ahead and talk about Liesl. How do we think she was portrayed? Stephen, you were perhaps saying something.
She
about
was such a doe-eyed girl in World War II.
in the movie. Right.
I did not feel like. I mean, like in the book, she was yelling at people and swearing and messing up and being really smart. But in the movie, I really only got the sense that she was troubled, but had overcome that and was a kind of a good-natured, literate little girl.
Right.
And I really missed the passion that I got from the book. Even when the book was being boring, it wasn't this boring, I suppose.
I agree. I remember starting the movie. And I'm just watching, and a lot of it didn't feel real. It didn't feel like it was happening to me. It felt very fake. Like when the gravedigger dropped the book and she found it, it seemed very much like the director said, okay, he's going to drop the book, then you pick it up and walk away.
Yeah, I just don't think it was very good.
Yeah, it just didn't feel natural. But she did have her moments, though. She did, as a character, have some moments that didn't feel okay. They did still feel stilted, but they felt like Liesl. Like when she was sitting at the table with her papa, and he's talking about, why did we ever do this? Why did I help that man? Why did we take in a Jew? Whatever. And she looks at him and she says, because that's what people do. And that
you're right.
Moment, it was still really good. Like that was Liesl, and that's who she was. And I liked seeing those every once in a while. They didn't come super frequently.
Also, I think maybe the moment when she had the idea to make the snowman, she started to come alive a little bit. There was more animation there. And I love how she says, I can't.
Oh my gosh, and she says it so much.
I can't do the sound.
Rudy.
It's driving me crazy, but I
you
love
say
it.
the R's, yeah, it's because in German you pronounce R in the back of your throat.
I know. I can't get that. I'm
Rudy.
going to practice that.
Yeah, I can't say it right.
Anyway.
I'm American.
Speaking of Rudy, what did you think of Rudy?
I think they got a great actor for Rudy.
Really?
I do. At first I was skeptical, but I think he has that face down right. I think if he had been... I think if there had been better direction, or maybe if he was a little older.
Physically, they got a great actor.
Maybe that's what I mean. A great likeness of Rudy, like the bright hair and the bright eyes, and I feel like he could have been very good, but the rest of the movie, I felt very disconnected from him.
I disliked Rudy more in the movie than I did in the book.
Did you dislike him in the book?
I did dislike him in the book. I mean, no. I didn't dislike him in the book. I didn't particularly like him. In the movie, I disliked him.
Right. I think, again, a difficulty with Rudy's portrayal in the movie.
He has even less character arc.
In the book, you did feel he had this weird intelligence. Like, he had how he would handle things and how he would think through things was unorthodox and interesting and clever in his own way. In the movie, he felt
very flat. You only got the face value of Rudy.
And that was already bad enough in the book.
Yeah.
He already felt like the sidekick.
I almost felt like he got cheated. Like, it's not really his fault. I feel like it's just the portrayal's fault. But we only get the surface value things. We don't really get much emotion. We don't get much inner turmoil or anything like that. He was, to me, he felt like the love interest. That somebody throws in simply to have one there. He didn't really have his own story. He did. I mean, and they did show that, like him running on the track by himself and getting caught. That was really good. But still, it was, and I feel like that was less to show his character and more to show Nazi Germany.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
And there were just too many moments that were just blatant and, uh-oh, folks, look, it's the Nazis. Can you believe this happened? Look how bad the Nazis were. It's like,
it felt like it was basking in that more than the book itself did. The book was pretty subtle.
The book had I
did like some of those
dark
moments.
Wait, you like what?
I liked some of those moments. I liked the moment where Max had to run. I liked the placement of that. I didn't particularly love the scene with him and his mom, but I did like seeing the Nazis pulling people out of their homes and like beating them in the streets and whatnot, because that actually happened. And so I
suppose so. For some reason,
I liked seeing that.
It felt like it wasn't deserved for some reason. It just felt like shock value. I don't know why.
I felt like they were trying to pull you back into, hey, this is Nazi Germany.
Right.
And this is happening. It's not happening where Liesl is, but it's happening.
Well, maybe that's the whole problem.
Yeah.
And they had to, show that in a kind of cinematic,
yeah,
terrifying way. Well, the book just, you never got to see that in the book. You just had Death saying, oh, it's bad out there. It's really bad out there.
Right.
Yeah, it just lacked the subtlety again.
I think that's one problem I have with the movie fairly consistently, is that it feels like it doesn't earn its moments because it keeps pulling these wonderful moments from the book, but the book earned them for the most part.
And that's
but
the
movie
thing.
just kind of keeps jumping from one to the other and not quite doing any of them justice.
And it's not like, it sounds like I hate everything about the movie and love everything about the book.
We're being really negative.
That is not true. The movie was well shot and decent, and the book was very good but flawed.
Right, so it's not like I can't think of an example of an exquisite book next to a terrible movie, but they are surely out there.
Harry Potter.
Maybe
I won't say that the books are exquisite, but the movies were bad enough.
All right,
to be terrible.
But maybe those
the Harry Potter movies were way worse than this movie. So it's not like
I'm really not interested in those then.
Yeah, okay, like at least the first two.
Those are the only ones I've watched.
Yeah, they were way worse than this movie. So like, it's not like they did really good as far as quality.
So
the characters. Lastly, about Rudy though, before we move on, the best thing about Rudy was Death's infatuation with him. Because you wonder why. Like, that's so interesting that there's this kid that Death is like, man, that kid didn't deserve to die. It's like Death is saying that. I love that.
And that wasn't in the movie really at all, was it? I don't even recall. I don't think so. No. But another thing that kind of, I think, goes to your point about Rudy just being the love interest, Abigail, and I could be recalling this wrong, but he was not barely alive and then died next to Liesl in the book.
No, he was completely dead by the time she.
That felt really, really cheap, and actually pulled to me most of the start.
By that point, I was talking to the screen alone in the dark, saying no. No.
Me too.
So, Stephen, explain why that was a bad move.
Because in the book, everyone was already dead. It was over. You and Liesl were in shock. And that moment with Rudy was pure regret on Liesl's part. It was over. Everything was gone. In the movie, they tried to use it as one last dramatic moment. They tried to make Rudy the central character. They tried to pull an old classic from Hollywood, and give him some final words.
And it also just made it all so much less believable.
It's like, how is he the one who's alive? And then kind of the one moment in the book when Liesl kisses Rudy, it meant something because that had been kind of a running gag, but with undercurrents through the whole book. But in the movie, it just wasn't even clear. He just died and she was sad, and that's It's like that's all that they trusted the audience to be able to understand. Liesl's best friend died, and she's sad.
Yeah, I didn't.
I did get the feeling throughout the movie that she was developing feelings for him. So I was glad that kind of came across. I think the biggest thing about that one scene, though, when he died, that got me was when he died in the middle of saying "I love you." He was okay. Maybe he just looked younger than he was supposed to be, but he looked really young, and I can't imagine a little kid thinking, "Oh, these are my last moments. I need to tell this girl that I love her." I would have imagined if he said anything, I would have imagined him saying, "Where's my mom?" or "It hurts," or something that a little kid would say, because he's like 12.
Yep, I agree. That felt completely out of place and just like, straight out of a Hollywood script book. Yeah,
I groaned. I went, "Oh."
I mean, it had I love.
Yeah, it was just too ridiculous. Like, yes,
It hurt.
I can't believe that was put in there. Like, how could they have thought that was a good idea? So that seems like the moment for you and me, at least, Stephen, that we were just kind of actually angry about. Like, that's the one thing
I
that
gave
I'm
up on the movie with the Rudy in the river, and I threw the movie under the bus with the
yeah, that was bad because that was
Rudy
such
and
an
the
incredible scene that they totally could have done, and then they pulled that.
I remember
why would you
talking
do
about that whole bombing scene in the last episode of The Book Thief, and you were saying I could imagine how they could do this, and I was watching. I was like, I guess this is kind of what Bryan said, but there's no art here. There's no passion. There's no.
It's just by the book.
It's exactly what you would have expected. It's showing everyone sleeping in their final moment. That's it. It's just face value.
Right.
I remember,
and they didn't even take the best lines from it. They didn't take the soul sitting up with Han's line that I thought was fantastic, and the lines about Rudy, his special like infatuation with Ruby. They didn't take that. So, yeah.
I know when that scene did come around, when everybody died, watching her go from body to body, whatever, it felt very flat. And I think a lot of that honestly had to do with the filming. Because I'm imagining in my head how this could have been filmed better, how it could have made me feel disoriented, how they can do like slow motion things or hold the camera or something like that. And so her going from body to body, I almost felt like I was watching from like a security camera on the street, just watching this little girl go from body to body, and it was
to me
very flat.
To me, and I won't do too much of a spoiler, but an example of a TV show doing shock of death incredibly well is in that Buffy episode.
The Buffy episode.
Oh,
the body. When she discovers the body, that is how you do that kind of scene.
Yes. That was very well done. And the episode that came after that was very good too.
And it's not like
it's just brilliant.
The Buffy series is known to have artistic camera angles. That was very simply done.
It wasn't even the camera. It was, I think a lot of that was the acting. Honestly.
The acting and the sound.
The writing. Oh, yeah.
Because there was really no music. It was just the normal noises of a suburban neighborhood, just walking around.
Oh, we'll come back to the music at some point, but I don't really have kind words for that either.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Book Thief movie.
That's interesting. The music, actually, I enjoyed a lot of it.
Can we go ahead and go into that? Because I'm curious. I love the music.
I loved it as well.
I was watching the movie saying this is the only good part of this movie.
I agree with you.
I liked the accordion music.
I liked the piano music a lot.
I felt like the piano.
I was surprised that it was John Williams because I'm not a huge fan.
Yeah.
Wait, it was John Williams?
It was John Williams.
John Williams has fallen from grace.
What?
Okay, it wasn't bad. And I'm sure I was influenced to an extent by the rest of the movie. But to me, it felt like it was trying to manipulate emotions that weren't there, just like everything else.
Well, at some point, John Williams has to make an emotional score. It's not his fault that the movie can't hold it up.
Yeah, no, see, the score was great. The score fit each scene and the emotion that was supposed to be in that scene.
I agree.
It was everyone else who was not holding up their end of the bargain.
I totally agree with that.
Well, I won't
you can go ahead.
I won't plant a stake in the ground and say this is how it is, because I was kind of experiencing it all as a whole.
Yeah.
So
I'm partially just happy there's something we disagree on. But about this whole movie.
I'm glad there's something I like about the movie.
Exactly.
Using the piano, like, I don't know what the word is. It felt like a somber sort of, I don't know. I can't find the right word for it, but it felt like something I've heard before, just like I had seen everything before in this movie. And when it's all just coming together to be a movie. And it felt like, I don't know, like the
The score wasn't perfect, just like the book wasn't perfect, but I think that the idea, how it used that solo piano through so much of it, especially I thought it was affecting at the beginning. I think it did a very good job of conveying the kind of mystery and intimacy of that scene with the train.
All right, here's the
snow.
thing. I don't like John Williams' whimsical scores. I don't like Harry Potter.
Okay.
It reminded me of Harry Potter. It did not do it for me. In the beginning, it kind of felt like zooming in on the train with the snow and the strange death-like narrator, and the music is bringing you into the mysteries. And I was like, it feels like a movie.
Gotcha. I mean, I would need to listen to the score more, but it was definitely my favorite part of the movie as a whole. Like if I took the acting or the story writing or the score, I think the score was the strongest part. And that's before I knew it was John Williams.
I know the parts of the score that really got me, that when I actually noticed it and I went, wow, this is really good. It was usually during an intimate moment, when she's in her house or she's talking to Max, or she and her dad are having a conversation, and it's just this light piano in the background, and it just kind of tickles me, and I go, oh man, that's what this book is supposed to feel like. That's what this movie is supposed to feel like. And so it was those times that I really noticed it. I didn't really notice it any other time. And that's why I was so surprised when I found out that it was John Williams. Because I purposely looked at the end. I was like, who did this score? It's great. And I was like, wow, that didn't sound like John Williams at all. No. Interesting. But it was just good, because John Williams is fine, but he's not one of my favorite composers.
Yeah. An interesting fact is it was apparently the first time Williams had scored a film that was not directed by Steven Spielberg since 2005.
Wow.
So he hasn't gotten around very much.
Yeah, I mean, it probably means something that I'm the least articulate on this point, because I haven't articulated it to myself very much. The music felt manipulative, but that could have been because the rest of the film was so flat.
I would guess that is the case, but I mean,
maybe I could have listened to the score of The Last of Us in this movie and been like, it's manipulating my emotions.
I think so. But I didn't listen to it a ton, so that's something I'd like to revisit. Okay. But anyway,
on to characters.
Hans Huberman. This was the most disappointing character for me.
Really?
I didn't like him.
When Hans walked into the room or into the scene, I kind of said to myself, what have you done with Liesl's Papa? This is an imposter. And he isn't what I imagined. And so I took a mental step back.
Right.
I took that step back and said, stopping an immature dunderhead, he's not going to look exactly like what you imagined.
I'm going to keep being an immature dunderhead.
Well, so you just blindly hated the character?
No, I tried to accept him through the whole movie. I think what I didn't like about him, this may be a weird one, but I thought he was too old.
What?
I didn't see Hans Huberman that old.
Are you serious?
Yeah. Maybe the book.
You're just
maybe
wrong.
I missed the book. Maybe the book wasn't explicit. That guy looked really old.
Hans Huberman had an adult son. He totally could have looked that old.
I'm not saying
he had
he
an
couldn't
adult
have been
son,
that old.
and he was called. I'm pretty sure I remember them calling him out when he was in the army about how old he was.
I don't remember that.
He was old, but that's okay. I mean, everyone has different.
Old
You're just
is
wrong,
a
Bryan.
pretty relative term.
He did seem pretty old, but I actually kind of liked that interpretation of him.
To me,
I don't know.
it felt too much like a grandfatherly role.
Yeah.
He didn't feel like his own person like he did in the book. For one thing, he just looked too, like I said, he looked too much like a traditional old grandfatherly mentor role. Well, at least for me, he seemed much more like his own kind of original person in the book. He seemed a lot less, this is going to be hard to articulate, but Steven, what were your thoughts on Hans Huberman?
Well, I want to make an allusion to Battlestar Galactica, but I know neither of you will get my reference.
All right, fine.
I've seen
go ahead.
6 episodes.
Did you run across, well, of course you did. You know the old War Dog Admiral?
Yes.
I felt like Hans Huberman consistently looked like that character did when that character was in pain and grimacing. He was just stuck like that.
Right.
I
kind of see what
that.
you mean.
I did notice he wasn't as loose as he was in the books.
And let's be honest, the picture that the book painted for that character is just doomed to failure by putting him on screen. everyone,
Right.
I felt, you don't think of what he looks like. You just know that he smells like dried paint and stale cigarettes. It's like, show me that on
Right.
the screen. And it's going to be really hard. But
Like, to me, Han's Superman is like quiet, intense, compassionate, and unexpected. And that guy was kind of just there. Like, he was too bulky and lined in the face and just kind of grizzled in a way that I never imagined Hans
yeah, I
being.
mean, I think you're right. I thought of Hans as an odd looking, almost an Abraham Lincoln sort of figure who is shaped oddly or very skinny or very tall or something, and playing his accordion in the background, and everyone's like, oh, there's old crazy Hans or whatever, but he has this subtle wisdom, and the movie doesn't do subtle very well.
I think you hit the nail on the head, Stephen, when you were just talking about how it was doomed to fail because Hans was so subtle in the book and so unexplainable. And I just feel like they again went the kind of the easy, obvious way with him in this book. Or in the movie, sorry. What did you think, Abigail? What did you think of Hans?
I kind of agreed. When he first showed up, she's in the car, and he, in the book, he's the only one who was able to coax her out. He didn't coax very well.
Yeah.
Honestly, that was the first time I went, oh, that kind of sucks. He showed up. He was just kind of there. I agree with that sentiment. He looked her straight in the face. He said things. He said goodnight. He didn't have the caring feel. He didn't have the warmth to me. He was still a great character. I still liked him in the movie, but he didn't have the same outcast, but like in the movie, he was like a diamond in the rough. I'm sorry, in the book, he was like a diamond in the rough.
In the book, it felt like he cared more than he should have. Like, I seem to remember him, like, staying up for hours, just waiting for Liesel. She won't come out. Okay, then I will wait.
He stayed up with her every night. He barely slept. He traded his cigarettes for her books. He did a lot for her. He used his paint and whatnot that he used for his job for her dictionary downstairs. And so I feel like a lot of those aspects of him were lost. And at the same time, I agree, it's really hard to portray a lot of these things that made Hans Hans on the screen because they're tiny little details. They don't necessarily matter to the story, but at the same time, they're the only things that matter to the story.
I wonder if it's difficult, but perhaps
and of course, we all agree that he's too old.
No, I don't.
That was the real problem. I felt like
I actually think that they got a good age.
All right,
it was
fine.
Stephen. I think that I really wish that they could have just taken some braver steps and put in those details, even though they seem irrelevant. Like, do something to make him seem strange or memorable, or something other than, like you said, just this kindly grandfather who's good at winking, but...
Yeah, he winked too much. It made it so obvious.
A good comparison, okay, not only for the book and the movie, but also for Hans, comes from Anne of Green Gables. The movie version specifically. The character of Matthew in Anne of Green Gables he was a little bit too old. Now that would have been too old. But the character of Matthew, he didn't say very much. He didn't do very much. He did not, have a ton of scenes. He didn't have a ton of lines. But he was the one who cared for Anne the most. He was her support. He was her warmth. He was this cute, quirky, little weird character that has a big heart, exactly like Hans was supposed to be. And they pulled that off somehow. I
did not realize how similar those dynamics were before now, but you're totally right.
They really are. The whole movie is very much, I'm going to die.
Oh, no!
Excuse me. Death is coming.
This is podcasting gold.
I know.
I took Abigail's soul into my arms.
She sat up to meet me. But the whole movie should have made me feel the way that Anne of Green Gables did. That's how I feel.
Did Anne of Green Gables, did her town get bombed at the end? I'm a little fuzzy on the details.
No, it didn't get bombed in the end, but I was intensely interested in all the little moments that seemed to not matter.
Yep, exactly.
But I did not.
So Hans,
this one was obviously a Hollywood flick, not a good storytelling. That's my summary of the whole thing. Bam!
Yeah.
I agree. Hans is done poorly. Moving on. Rosa.
She wasn't mean enough.
She wasn't mean enough. Yeah.
I mean, she wasn't mean enough.
Just I don't know. I mean, she was okay. She was fine. She wasn't. Everything wasn't harsh enough. I don't know.
I didn't love Rosa
in the book. Borderline abusive. that's what she was in the book.
Yeah.
I feel like they had to pull back on everything. Like, they wouldn't take their characters to extremes like the book did.
I feel like
when
they were
Liesl
scared.
just swore at the mayor's wife and just threw the book at her and was a complete jerk for seemingly no reason. And when Rosa would just like scream in the kitchen, she was just kind of stern, but she seemed like a pretty normal person.
Yeah.
And I guess it kind of takes out what was interesting about her, because now she's just boring. Like, she was at least boring and a little entertaining in the book. And got some depth because you realized how she seemed like completely out of balance at the beginning, and then it kind of, you realized, oh, wait a minute, she's not insane. She's actually kind of good in a crisis. In the movie, it felt like, well, of course she'd be okay in a crisis. She's just a normal person. Anyone would be okay at this.
Yeah.
So it didn't feel like that divide was there.
I don't have anything else to say really about Rosa.
I feel like Rosa is the perfect example of how the creators of the film were afraid to actually go all out. It's like they wanted to make a safe movie. They're like, you know what? Let's make sure that this movie sells. So we're not going to make her abuse a child on screen.
And like,
I don't know. I feel like that's what happened.
The small things they constantly miss out on. Like, okay, we can't technically curse on this podcast. So when Rosa is first meeting Liesl and she says, "What are you looking at?" That they changed the word, and it was a small thing, but it was a lot just harsher and meaner. Just like, what's wrong with this woman in the book? And in the movie, she's kind of like, "Oh, she is a stern person. You are correct."
Right. Yeah. Yep. Not a lot to say. Like, we didn't have a lot to say about Rosa originally, but kind of disappointing. So let's see here. Max. Now, I may be an outlier here. Max is probably my favorite character they did.
He was not what I imagined.
No.
Correct.
But he had...
I liked him.
Yeah, he had personality.
I think what they did best is Max and Liesl's relationship. I think was the best.
There were some moments that I really liked when they were joking about Hitler. I liked that.
Oh, that was great.
Quite a lot.
Yeah. I think they did Max in a different but acceptable way. And their relationship, you actually got more warmth from it in a lot of ways than in the book because it was on film. And because you could see the two people interacting. At least that's how I read into it. What did you guys think of Max?
There was only one thing that I really disliked about Max.
What is that?
He was not consistent in his accent.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I didn't notice.
His accent was, which is funny because I looked him up on IMDb during the movie to find out if he was a German actor, because I've never seen him before. I was like, is he actually German? Because this little girl who's playing Liesl, I'm pretty sure she's actually German.
Right.
And I was like, he sounds like a Brit.
He does.
He doesn't really sound like a German. So I look him up.
You're right.
And it's funny because one of his praises on IMDb was his ability to do many accents, and especially his role in The Book Thief. And I'm going, but he's the only one that I heard him talk and say he's a Brit.
I think I actually noticed that some as well.
Yeah.
I was wondering if like the character was pretending to be German.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering too. I was like, wait, was Max actually British? And then I went, that doesn't make sense for a British Jew to be coming into Nazi Germany. So no, he was German. Right. And so that kind of threw me out a little bit. Since, I mean, if they had done the entire movie that way with everyone with a British accent, that still would have made me upset, but at least it would have been consistent. That's a very, very small nitpick.
Here's my biggest problem with how they did Max is they entirely cut out that he was a fist fighter.
Oh, yeah.
Which was kind of important.
That's the thing. Max, I think they did well. But they missed out on the heart of the character. And how many times am I going to say that the movie did that? But he didn't make the picture book either, and that's just...
that disappointed me.
Wow,
so
okay, he didn't make the picture book, but I did like that they changed it so that he was the one who gave her the book to write it. That's
who
what I
gave
liked.
her that
in the movie or in the book. It was the mayor's wife.
Oh right, yeah.
And I think it was a really good choice to make it Max instead. And then the book that got thrown in the river was that book. That was really good because that had a lot more emotional pull to it than
I
disagree. Let's say I can totally get why they couldn't go through an entire picture book in the middle of the movie.
Sure.
It would have been hard to make that work.
That would have lost all of its emotion.
I think I gotta disagree with you guys though, because I don't think that it worked out this way because it feels generic now to me.
I agree.
It still felt generic. Yeah.
I agree with you, Stephen. I was just saying I don't see how they could have done the picture book well.
I guess then
I think that would have been really difficult.
I suppose so. It's just
But
the
how
whole,
he just has said it was the Jewish word or whatever for right did feel very generic. It was like, go right. Yeah, I will call upon my cultural heritage
like Max
to
was
inspire
not saying,
you.
I understand you, small human girl, and I will want to encourage the creativity I see within you. In the book, he's like, I'm a miserable, confused person, and you're the only person I can relate with. Let me put my feelings down in crude fashion in this book that I spent hours forging, and it means something.
Right.
And it didn't mean anything in the movie.
Yeah, his illness was also, they had to speed through it so quickly that it was tough to really get across either.
So, I mean, that said, the parts that they did do with Max,
Yeah.
I think were,
I liked it.
I mean, I think initially I was like, I don't know about this, because it's like, there's someone at the door. Well, answer it. Okay. Jesus, Mary and Joseph, it's Orlando Bloom. And I was just kind of like, I didn't think of him like that. I thought he'd be much.
He was a
more,
little too like handsome.
Yeah, he looked kind of
maybe.
like a movie star, which he is.
Yeah.
But he looked like
It
one.
felt
there
like he was
wasn't
trying to
enough-
be a heartthrob, but he wasn't that
Okay.
cute.
But then he had personality. He had some charm.
I think that's actually another consistent problem I noticed across the movie, and we're just going to keep bringing these up. Characters physically could not change enough. Max did not change very much from when he is at his worst to when he is at his best. From how his hair went from needles to feathers, in Liesel's words, I believe, or twigs to feathers, that is, to how he was like completely like malnourished and basically dying to quite healthy. Like, you never really got a very large difference in Max's physicality in the movie. Same with Liesel growing up. Again, this comes from me watching Boyhood, but that has like ruined me on
that's hard
every
to
other
do. They
movie
filmed it
following
in,
a
like,
childhood.
year.
I liked how
'Cause it's-
Star Wars did it with Anakin. That was really subtle.
Right, because like the Book Thief takes place over how many years? Several, correct?
It
I
takes
mean-
place over about 3.
Well, the whole thing
Mm-hmm.
from when she comes
Yes.
there. I mean,
Oh, that's true. She came at like 7, and it was like 15, I think, when she.
yeah.
Right.
So it
When
went
everyone
through,
died.
And
a
so
good
they had to
years.
truncate that actual
which is
change of
fine.
a person.
Like that's
a lot.
not
Yeah.
something
Like-
I
I
would
know,
expect.
but I'm saying
In
it's.
the-
I'm not saying they could have done it differently. I'm saying that's a difficulty movies
Yeah.
have doing books. The Lord of the Rings had the same problem.
Yeah, absolutely.
So-
But Lord of the Rings,
They did do pretty well, though. I would say this movie did fairly well with that, in that
Mm-hmm.
the actual story seemed like it happened pretty quickly, but the
Right.
epilogue, when she sees Max again, she looked legitimately older to me.
Yeah,
they did a good job.
They did
there.
really good.
They used her hairstyle a lot.
Yeah,
to,
they
to
did.
portray age. They did a good job.
They did
with
like
that.
the messy curls and then the more like feminine curls later.
and also
too.
her
And I think they put
her
makeup on her
clothing.
too.
That was one of my issues. I have to say, like,
What?
even when Liesel was like living in this tiny little dirty, German hole, essentially, she looks like she just did her hair with some really nice curling irons or something. It's just
That's a
I don't know how she pulled that.
I
look
imagined her
off.
much dirtier and scrappier and less.
Yeah, that like
less like
haphazardly
nice little girl.
cut hair, running through the streets, bantering back and forth with Rudy. It didn't have that.
On the other hand,
realness.
Germans are very prim and proper people.
No, okay.
So they're gonna keep orderly.
Also, I was kind of hoping that they would do some dreamlike sequences of Max boxing Hitler, but they
Yeah.
That could've
they
been
didn't
awesome.
have the bravery to do that kind of stuff. Is what I'm
Also,
saying.
the dreams about her brother. I was actually surprised there weren't
Yeah.
scenes there. All right, so we're back to complaining about different things. I'm trying to think if there are any characters left.
well,
Anything
I mean, the
missed?
mayor's
Besides
wife.
death.
I think
Okay,
she
the
was
mayor's
done.
wife, Ilsa Herman.
She was done all right. I think I liked her. But they just
Again,
missed
they
out on
weren't
the
brave enough
good
with her.
story arcs.
Yeah.
What was that, Abigail?
I said again, they weren't brave enough with her. She was flat.
She didn't. You did not get the sense at all that she's a broken woman.
No, they just skipped it.
That was the point.
I mean,
That was the point
I
of her
did-
character.
I did like how Liesel was with her. She was kind of becoming friends, and then the mayor came in and made them stop and everything. I think they did that well, except for the fact that it felt stilted.
Mm-hmm.
Other than that, though, she was just a means to an end. She was just the lady that Liesel established relationships so that after everyone died, she'd have someone to stay with.
Yeah.
Kind of what it
fair
felt
point.
like.
Which is interesting because that wasn't even very necessary because, as it showed in the future, she ended up working with Alex.
Yeah. Well, I mean, she did end up doing that in the book as well. I mean, I just
yeah.
assumed that she ended up living with the one lady.
Yeah.
And
But
I
worked
can
with
only-
Alex.
I'm just
I don't
saying
know.
the book that shows that the book had more than one role for her. So I'm saying that role wouldn't
that's
even be
true.
necessary.
That wouldn't even really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, Steven, you
I
were
can
saying
only
something?
imagine that people watching this film would be nitpicking very similar things that we are, and then just saying, why did that matter? Why did they bother doing that? And only if you've read the book can you explain why it matters, because they skipped over all the parts that mattered, not the things that happened, but the reasons.
That's actually the same. That's the same argument I have with the Harry Potter movies. Because in the Harry Potter movies, they get everything that matters, but they miss everything behind it.
I've watched.
There is no heart in those movies. It's literally just, hey, we have magic wands and we're doing these things. The actors do their best to portray emotion, and there is some emotion, especially in the later ones, but they just miss everything behind it that matters. And that's actually my most frequent complaint when a book is being transferred to a movie. I've only seen three. I've only seen three do it well. That would be Anne of Green Gables, The Fault in Our Stars, and Lord of the Rings.
And see,
I think one reason Lord of the Rings does it well is there is very little character motivation going on behind the scenes in Lord of the Rings. It is a very, very visual.
I almost feel like Lord of the Rings movies. No, I can't say that it captured it better. I saw the movies first. That could be part of it, but after reading the books, I went, "Oh wow, they did change things and everything." But the movies were good on their own. The books were good on their own.
I think one exception to that is the Hobbit story. I think it had some subtlety that the movies didn't get across.
That's not part of it.
No, not the Hobbit. I'm talking about the Hobbits in Lord of the Rings.
Oh, okay.
Had some character subtlety going on. I think like Aragorn, Gimli, Legolas, that whole story plot, Gandalf had very little that the movies didn't end up capturing.
I look at it in a slightly different way though. Comparing it to Harry Potter, in this, let's say the first and second Harry Potter movie, every single thing that happens in those films is essentially shot for shot from the book. It is all accurate.
Right.
If you're a fan, there's no room to complain. And I liked the books and was bored out of my mind watching the movies.
Yeah.
Lord of the Rings,
that's how I felt.
They change massive things. They take out the 15-year gap in the first book. They change Lord Faramir's entire character motivation. Gollum has different story arcs. Like the whole thing is changed. But I love those movies because they take risks and they have true heart and like passion beyond just trying to get page to screen. It's I don't like all the changes. I actually am more angry at those movies than I am at like the Harry Potter movies, but that's because the writers on the movies cared enough to make their own interpretation and make something that's worth standing on its own.
Absolutely. And it's more important to me that you capture the spirit and the heart of the book than you capture exactly what happened, which is why I'm okay. I mean, there were certain, especially in Lord of the Rings, when they changed Aragorn's character, I liked him much better in the books. But I was totally okay with how he went on in the movies because the whole spirit of the movies and the way everything worked together felt just like the books.
Right, so at the end, when everyone is saying goodbye, it doesn't really matter what happened because because why it's happening is exactly the same. You still feel those same emotions because like you said, the spirit is definitely there. And in The Book Thief, it ended the way the book ended, but I felt nothing except like disappointment.
Right.
Exactly.
So I will say I actually appreciated a little bit like the final shot of The Book Thief.
Oh, that was pretty cool.
Of showing her house, like, in the future.
Yeah, that was kind of interesting.
Like, when it showed the Apple computer, it was just kind of almost a chills moment of, like, oh my gosh, someone could live from Liesl's time to living with an Apple computer. Like, that was almost just a cool passage of time moment for me. But nevertheless, I agree with all of the points you just made. I just wanted to bring that up before we close out here, that I actually quite liked that shot. And that scene showing all the different pictures in her house as a way to kind of tie together her narrative.
I've seen the Titanic. It doesn't amaze me.
Unfortunately, I don't know what you're talking about, but okay. Unfortunately, I feel like when you did the Haunted by Humans line, it was one of those moments of, man, did you not earn that?
Oh, yeah.
that line.
That was just,
Because, of course, you have to end with that, but that line was so good in the book, and in the movie, it was just so, okay.
And then you compare that to...
Because he did no haunting in the movie. He did tons of haunting in the book.
Precisely.
And also, it's just like, why do you care? That was a boring story. Like, that's what interests you? So yeah, you didn't at all get a good sense of why death was interesting.
No, you didn't understand who he was remotely. I mean, I can imagine someone saying like, talking to you about the movie and saying, so I think that the story is really about death. And then being like, what? You mean, yeah, everyone died. It's like, no, I mean the character of death. Oh, that was Death? Oh, you mean the narrator? Oh, I'd forgotten about him.
Yeah, I can imagine people watching the movie being like, so I think I figured it out. The narrator is dead. It's like, I don't blame you for taking some time to realize that, because they didn't make it that clear. Like, they only did a couple scenes, but you really forget about him a lot of the time. So yeah, that's a good point. That wraps up all the characters. Any closing notes before we end this here podcast?
I'm really impressed by all of you people who put a lot of hard work into making this film.
Yeah, if you're listening to this, you're like, whoa, someone made a podcast about us. I'm sorry.
I mean,
it was good. It just wasn't what we wanted.
Yes, make it again. Try again.
Try again.
yes, sure.
Well, in their defense, I'll use this as my last words. I went into the movie expecting it not to be good because I read the book first. Not necessarily because I read the book first, but because, okay, I'm using the same words to say different things. Because I read the book and saw that the way that the book was laid out, the heart behind the book, the fact that death was such a huge part of why I love that book, I knew the movie wasn't going to be good. And that's because it probably could have been done to make this movie or this book into a very powerful movie, but you would have had to change so much of it that it probably would have lost all of its book thief essence and would have just been a different movie.
I agree.
In my opinion. So in that light, kudos to those who tried. I appreciate it. Y'all made some money. That's good. But other than that, I was surprised after I read the book, I was surprised to find out that it was a movie.
I was too. Yeah, I was not expecting that. Another weird side note, these are my closing comments, I guess, which is not like a wrap up or anything, but I found it very jarring that the movie was in English.
Yes, I kind of wanted it to be all in German.
To the point where they're writing English words on the wall. That's where I find it like hard to wrap my mind around, like, okay, so I'm not actually seeing what these people are doing. Like, because she was learning German words, I assume. So you have to imagine, in what they're portraying, the thing you were looking at is actually different. Like, there should be German words on the wall.
Especially since every once in a while, and I guess the book did this too, it seemed like they would just slip in little phrases in German or French.
The book did that as well.
And it confused
I never like it when things do that.
In the book, it was a little bit more excusable because you can't read German. In the movie, they could have had everyone do everything in German and have subtitles.
There was at the very beginning, the first line was subtitled German, and I'm like, oh,
I was really excited.
Yeah, and then it wasn't, and that honestly really bummed me out. Yeah. I think that it would have been a very interesting thing that could have put the movie closer to delivering something close to what the book did, or at least something different than an average movie. So, just random thing I wanted to point out.
Yeah.
All right, and that'll do it for our first movie discussion.
Give me any closing thoughts.
I thought I gave you first.
No, I don't think so. I'm pretty sure.
I could have sworn I did.
Didn't.
I didn't?
Nope.
Well, I'm going to edit it so I did, and you're going to sound so wrong.
No.
All right, Steven, you got any closing thoughts?
I think my closing thoughts are that kind of what I was saying at the beginning. It feels like a bunch of people monitoring the New York Times bestseller list saw this, realized it was popular, found the summary on Spark Notes, and
you can be so like dismissive of things when you wrap them up like this.
Put those scenes into a film. Now they also got people to act well-ish, and they made sure everything was accurate to the book and made sure that all of the proper things were in place, but no one really cared about the message.
I think, honestly, my best advice to this movie would be don't make it.
Yeah, I think so. There's no reason that this movie should have succeeded. It's so hard.
Yeah, when I criticize something like, I don't know, Transformers, I haven't actually seen it, but it's pretty easy to look at a movie like that and say, just get a better script. Make interesting characters. Just do something fun and well written with it instead of whatever.
You look at some of the early Star Wars movies and say, how did this fail? Everything about this is awesome.
I feel like you can just, your criticisms feel like, yeah, it's easy, just do that. I don't have any easy answers for making a Book Thief movie good. There are things they could have done better. We've been able to point out some of the things that went wrong, but actually, not just not being wrong, but being actively right would be very difficult for something like this because it's not a story that naturally translates to film. It is all about the prose and the writing. I mean, I felt bad even listening to an audiobook instead of reading it at times, because the actual book, how it was laid out, would like put a picture book in the middle of it and do interesting things with its limited tools. So it's really hard to adapt that to other mediums.
I completely agree. It sounds like an exciting challenge, and I like already have ideas in my mind on how it could be done. I just don't think that these people were looking for that. I think they wanted to adapt a movie into a book. I mean, a book into a movie.
Right.
Well, I mean, it was a YA, almost dystopian. It was Nazi Germany, so I kind of count that as a dystopia. It was a YA dystopian bestseller. Therefore, it was made into a movie. That's what happens. That's the only reason it was made into a movie in my mind.
Dang it, you're right.
You're right.
And just like
it was
Hunger
only
Games,
dystopian because everything got blown up.
Yeah,
it
was again one of those stories that either could not it couldn't support itself as a story. It could only support itself because it was in writing, and they made it into a movie.
So it just makes me continue to nod my head and say, "Yep, I get it" with the Hunger Games, and then say, "I don't know how they did it with The Fault in Our Stars." That was an anomaly.
That blew my mind, honestly.
Yes.
And the more times I watch that, the more I like it. I've now seen that movie the same amount of times as I've read the book, and I've actually grown to like it more, and the actors more, and everything about it more, but with a lot of these other movies, I just like them less.
Well, the nice thing about The Fault in Our Stars is A, you barely have to spend any budget or time on the setting.
That's true.
Like, talk about the easiest movie to film ever. And B, the writing is already good and interesting to read off verbatim. So you're already going to have a character with a lot of character. I don't think Gus's actor was particularly great. But his lines were great.
I didn't think he was particularly great the first time I went through. The more times that I go through it, though, I think, wow, that's Gus's voice. But maybe that's because I've seen it.
Right.
But that's the thing that gets me, though. The Fault in Our Stars was really well done. Maybe it's because they brought John Green onto the set when
that surely
filming
helped,
it. That could have been it, because his heart was really behind it, and the director's heart, he wanted to portray a book that John could be proud of. Or, I'm sorry, a movie that John could be proud of. With the movie, that didn't happen. And the movie, the writing was really good. They could have taken so many lines verbatim. They could have had Death narrating as many scenes as Hazel narrated in The Fault in Our Stars. And even that would have made it a little bit better. Some different camera angles would have made it a little bit better. Some different actors would have made it a little bit better. There are so many ways that this could have lived up to The Fault in Our Stars' potential. Yeah. But it didn't.
I just think their focus was in the wrong place for most of it.
It did feel a bit like someone told them that they had to put the narrator in. So then they just picked a few places and then ignored him for the rest of the film.
And he was English.
Yeah, I didn't know Death was English.
I mean, that was okay. It was okay. I don't know what I would have expected him to be.
Swahilian. Okay, I think we're done, Brian.
Right. Irish. I don't know. Anyway, yes. Thank you, everyone, for joining us for yet another episode. We're going to be starting a new book for next week's episode. Woo! This was technically a bookmark episode. And we are going to be starting one that Stephen has brought us this time. It is The Golem and the Genie. For people that don't know how to spell that, it's The Golem and the Jinni. We'll have it in the show notes as well. I don't really know anything about this book except what you told me, Stephen, so just give your quick summary.
Well, like I said last time, it's about two mythical beings meeting and understanding one another and going on some compellingly mysterious adventures.
Awesome. All right. So you can get that on Amazon, lots of different places. I just say Amazon because that's where I got it.
Probably
I really feel like I wasn't writing it because you told me to give the book recommendation for the week, and I'm like, okay, I gotta give a good pitch. That was so exciting.
Exactly. So we're going to be reading Act 1, which is going to be chapters 1 through 10. There are like 30 chapters in this book, so yeah.
Are they long chapters? It didn't seem like a super long book, but then again, I only saw the cover on Amazon because that's the only way I buy books nowadays.
And that's how you can totally tell how long. It's about 500 pages.
Oh, that's not bad.
Yeah, so yeah, not that long.
Okay.
So yeah, we're going to be discussing chapters 1 through 10 on our episode next week, so feel free to read along and join us, or just, if you like listening to us talk about things and having it spoiled for you, then you're
in the right place, folks.
Yeah. So yeah, that's coming up.
The books, so you don't have to.
You can find us on Twitter at Third Person Show. I am personally on Twitter as Lord Meldor. That's Meldorr. Steven is Stephen Kelly 180. Abigail is the Thinky Reader. Is that correct?
Yes, you got it. I'm so proud.
The Thinky Reader. You can email us at thirdpersonshow@gmail.com, and you can visit our webcast, our website at whalesorwhales.com. You'll find us there on the front page. We have a lot of other shows as well because we're part of the Whales Are Whales network. So there are other cool podcasts like this with cool people like us, and a webcomic as well. It's a fun platform. So check that out. Anything else, Steven, that you want to plug or that we missed?
Nope.
Nothing. Okay, then that'll be it. Thank you, everyone, and until next week, go hug a book.
Oh no!
But for now,
we're keeping it.
For now, we've got to book it.
This is getting even worse as we're branching
let's
out
just
into like
add
a storytelling podcast instead of just a book podcast. It's just, it's like we're
Go
keying
hug
to
the
book in
storytelling
desperation.
medium.